Thank you for tuning in to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast, where we discuss the latest news, rumors, and games of the NFL and college football. And I'm Jeremiah.
And I'm Anthony.
Welcome back, guys. Episode 174. It is February 10th, and we still have a lot to talk about. You know, we're under a week since the actual season ended, but we have some stories that broke over the past 24 hours, and we're going to start with the NFC West here. You know, the Arizona Cardinals, they look like they were going to look for a quarterback. Well, they still might look for a quarterback of the future, but they are going to get Carson Palmer back under center next year, and which is bodes well huge. He announced he will return for his 15th NFL season yesterday. Larry Fitzgerald announced last week he was going to return. So I honestly think if Larry Fitzgerald didn't, the fact that he didn't walk away kind of really played a part in Palmer's return. I actually do believe that because I know these two actually really have been playing well together for the past couple of years, and I think it's good for the Cardinals because it gives them more time to find that quarterback of the future. I think they might get in the draft. Maybe in the first round, they can probably take a shot at one of the young rookie quarterbacks coming in. But I think it's great for the Cardinals, their offense, and it gives them another chance to compete in the NFC West. Because basically, right now, it looks like all they have to do is pretty much compete against the Seattle Seahawks. Because the Rams are bad, the Niners are pretty bad. So I do think this is a perfect time for the Cardinals to compete in the NFC West.
It's one thing with the Cardinals where you had Carson Palmer 2 years ago, one of the best quarterbacks in the league, right? He was somebody who, when he was at his peak, was an MVP candidate. He was somebody that was bringing the Cardinals back, right? You had John Brown who was doing things, getting a little bit better. You had David Johnson making some strides. You had Larry Fitzgerald still doing a lot of things, and Carson Palmer was that last piece that was getting them really, really high as far as, a team that was like, oh, okay, cool, they may actually compete with, something like the Green Bay Packers, maybe competing with, I think the Niners were already kind of by the wayside at that point, but competing with Carolina. They were competing with a lot of the teams to make it to the Super Bowl, and then the next year comes and he regresses. And you could say he regressed from the playoffs on when he had the bad game, but now that he's back, it at least gives some kind of stability, right? Because Ben and I talked about this on the sports show where he basically, they were asking like, okay, would you rather have him or would you rather have Tony Romo, right? Because they're about the same age. But the problem is with Tony Romo, A, he's injured a lot, and B, he doesn't have the familiarity with the Cardinals that Carson Palmer does. Carson Palmer's been there for a few years, and even though he regressed a decent amount this last year, he's still capable of playing in all of the games, right? He played 15 games last year, so fine, he missed a game, but Romo missed the whole season. And in 4 of the last 5 seasons, he's thrown for at least 4,000 yards and played in at least, like I said, 15 games. The one was when he had 6 games, he got hurt, fine. That'll happen, but 1 in 5 years, you'll deal with that compared to the last 2 years with Romo. And with Carson Palmer, he's somebody that you have the opportunity to get him to maybe play in like a reduced role kind of a thing. I don't mean play in less games, but I mean like have him be relied on a little bit less than you maybe wanted to be this year, because the thing with Carson Palmer was he went from basically 3 touchdowns and 1 interception as a quarterback to not even 2 to 1, right? He was somebody that you were totally okay with throwing the deep ball to John Brown, getting everybody involved. It was a great year. Like I said, he had 35 touchdowns to 11 interceptions to 26 and 14. Not only that, his average yards per completion went from 8.7 to 7.09. So he regressed in that aspect. He threw for less yards, quarterback rating, like everything was basically down for him. But now that we kind of had this year of like, oh, okay, cool, he can't do these things, that he kind of like adjusted. And the fact that he's there is a lot better than, like you said, relying on a rookie or relying on these other people. Maybe do that going forward, but at least now you have the guy that got you far in the playoffs before, and see if he can kind of recapture that, because this might be his last year in the league.
Yeah, and I actually do think that Palmer doesn't really have a lot of time left, and I I think that what helps Carson Palmer with the Cardinals is he has arguably probably one of the best running backs, probably one of the best playmakers in the game in David Johnson.
Right.
That's going to help him out a lot. I think they're going to rely even more on him now, with most of their star players getting a lot older. I think Larry Fitzgerald's got 33, Palmer's 37. I do think they're going to try to find another weapon in the passing game, whether they do it in the draft or whether it's free agency. But I do think what they have is a defense. And I know they looked really old last year, but they still have a lot of talent on this team. They have some games that got away from them late in the year, maybe early part of the year too. They were competitive in a lot of games, so they could have had even better record. I just think, kind of like their age kind of got to them in a little bit. And, you did say, Anthony, that Carson Palmer was an MVP candidate a couple years ago.
Right.
They were one Carolina Panthers team away from going to the Super Bowl, and that team was vicious. But the reason why I think Carson Palmer is really good for the Arizona Cardinals right now, because we got to think about when Palmer got hurt 3 years ago. They still were able to make the playoffs. They had like a 11-1 start or 10-1 start or something like that.
They had
then they went through like 3 other quarterbacks for the remaining like 5 to 6 games, including the playoffs. Mm-hmm. And then they started Drew Stanton, and we all know how that went. They just couldn't compete.
Well, it wasn't even just they started Stanton; they started Lindley too. I think that season
did.
They had in the playoffs. That was bad.
Yeah, so we see the impact of Carson Palmer, how he was important to his team.
Right.
And I know he's not going to be the same player he was 2 years ago, but he still gives him stability. He still gives him veteran leadership. He still gives him experience. And I do think if they bring in a quarterback, which I do think they will, I think they will get someone I think they're picking number 10. I don't really remember the draft pick right now. But I do think they're going to take a shot at DeSean Kaiser. I can see him taking the shot at Mitch Trubisky if the Niners don't take him at 2, or Deshaun Watson if he is not taken already. But I can see the Cardinals addressing the quarterback position in the first round this year.
Yeah, you want to look at forward, because the team around him is so good. That defense we thought with Chandler Jones and everybody else, Tyrann Mathieu, we thought with the defense was going to be one of the things kind of Denver-esque where it would help lead them being successful. But, the whole thing kind of collapsed around him. But if you can have a quarterback who is capable of doing a lot of things and on the cheap, like you said, if he's in the draft, he's going to be a lot cheaper than what you're paying Carson Palmer or some veteran, like I said, Romo or someone like that to come in. Then all of a sudden you have a chance to compete in this scenario for the long haul, right? And look at the Cardinals going forward. They're, the 13th overall pick right now in the draft, so they have like a high enough pick to where, if they want to trade up, like they're not going to get one of the top quarterbacks because you're not going to get that at 13, but if they wanted to trade up, they could do that in the sense of looking at San Francisco and saying, hey, we'll do this, you give us this, or even if they wanted to, do the whole Garoppolo thing with the Patriots and basically say, like, we'll give you him for the 13th overall pick, kind of thing like that. They could do that as well. They're in a good situation, and with Palmer, he's at least someone that can, at the very least, transition into the new, era as far as the Cardinals go, because like I said, we saw how good David Johnson is. It's not like David Johnson is kind of like Adrian Peterson as to where he's going to be gone in a couple of years. He's somebody that's very young, very cheap. He's going to be doing this for a little bit of time. And, we saw as far as rushing and receiving goes, he's someone that you absolutely have to rely on both ways. He's only 25 years old.
Yeah, and, Jimmy Garoppolo to the Cardinals is a very valuable, I think, a possible destination. I actually think that would be the best option for Garoppolo.
Well, I look at that because you get situations where, he's out of the conference, going from New England to Arizona. He's basically going West Coast, East Coast kind of thing, like totally, thousands of miles away. The Patriots don't have to worry about him. The Patriots gets a high draft pick. Everything's good. Everyone's happy. All right, Jimmy, let's see how you can do on even like another good team, right? It's not like you're sending him to the Browns. And
it's not like you're sending him to Niners, a team that doesn't have any much talent.
Right.
And I do think I like that better for Jimmy Garoppolo than the actual Cardinals because there was talk that Jimmy Garoppolo was possibly getting traded to Cleveland. And
to be fair, Belichick doesn't care where he takes you. He took Jamie Collins and put him in Cleveland. He doesn't care.
He doesn't. But
he took Richard Seymour and put him in Oakland when Oakland was bad. He doesn't care as long as he gets a good draft pick, which he shouldn't care, honestly. Like, he shouldn't care where he's going. But at least for Jimmy, I'm saying that's like one of the best scenarios. And you still get a high draft pick for the Patriots. Mm-hmm. You get a top, like 13 pick.
Yeah. And Jimmy Garoppolo would have a pretty solid team around him. But it remains to be seen what the Cardinals would do in the NFL draft and what they would do in the offseason.
Right.
But we're going to continue some offseason talk after we take our first break here. We're going to talk about DeSean Jackson and what he said regarding the Washington Redskins when we get back to the Going to Me Concepts football podcast.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Welcome back to the Going to Me Concepts football podcast. And it is early February, and this is the point of the year, Anthony, where we have to kind of start talking about what we think is going to happen in the offseason. Mm-hmm. And we have a player that we want to talk about here first. He's currently with the Washington Redskins, but he looks like he's about to hit the free agent market this year, and that's DeSean Jackson. He did say he wants to remain with the Washington Redskins. He said he prefers to stay in D.C.
He said, I do want to stay. I do want to still be here. My family and my family house. I hope everything here, and I don't want to be in a transaction and move. First thing first, I do want to be here, and hopefully we can make it work. But once again, this is the business, so things happen. I'm just really excited about the opportunity. I have to sit and now all the balls in my corner and a little bit and see what we can do. I'm just excited, and I'm going to let my agent take care of that. Basically saying the whole thing of like, hey, I want to be here, but I get that if I leave, but it's not my choice if I leave, right? That's how, he's kind of phrasing it. And it makes sense because DeSean Jackson is someone that, whether or not you kind of realize it, was still a pretty good player last year. Like, he's not Odell Beckham. He's not Julio Jones. He's never really been that guy as far as getting a bunch of receptions and getting a bunch of yards that way. I mean, if you look at DeSean Jackson's career in general, he never had 1,200 yards in a season. He never had, outside of one season where he had over 80 receptions, never had more than 62 receptions in the season. He was always the deep threat guy. Like, that was always his go-to, right? That was always his thing that made you want to watch him because he'd always have those like 40, 50-yard bombs. And he's still doing that. That's not anything that he's not doing again this year. He had 1,005 yards and 56 receptions, but he was 17.9 as far as average, which, if you take everything into account, is the fourth best in his career. So he's still, as far as that goes, right at the level that he's always been, right? Because 56 receptions, his first 2 years in the league, he had 62, and then 1 year he had 82. But he's still kind of in that range, right? He's still doing the things that you remember him doing in Philadelphia. It's just now he's 30, so we don't think about him doing that anymore.
Yeah, and I honestly think, wouldn't it be kind of funny if he went back to the Philadelphia Eagles?
I mean, he'd be the best receiver by far there. That team doesn't have good receivers. Jordan Matthews was the best guy they had on there, and he was dropping balls left and right.
Yeah, no, I have him on my fantasy team.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah, no, he was, yeah, exactly, me too. Like, he was someone that, this whole team you couldn't really rely on as far as receivers. So if he goes back there, it would make sense. And he said he wants to stay in Washington, and it makes sense because as a team, as far as like 40-plus yard passing plays goes, they were tied for 5th, right? They had 11 of those. And even as far as just like 20-plus yard plays, they were up there too. They were 6th with that. They had 58 of them. So Kirk Cousins is one of those guys that can get it down the field, or down the court. What court cut?
Down the field.
I was right the first time.
Down the field. Yeah, you're right.
And, you know, Kirk Cousins can do that, and DeSean Jackson has finally found a guy that can do that for him because it was a little bit of time where it was kind of not happening in that stretch. But now that he finds someone in Kirk Cousins who he trusts, because Kirk Cousins took another step last year, it's a situation now where going forward he wants to basically stay with a team that can do that, right? He wants to stay with someone who can get him the ball like that because he's never going to be the slant route guy. He's never going to be the guy that gets you kind of those like dump-off passes. He is, you know, shorter Randy Moss, right? Kind of just throw the ball deep and I got you kind of a thing. Just he doesn't have the height and jumping ability and, you know, I guess he has the speed of Randy Moss, but it's just not in the same kind of frame.
Yeah, I actually think DeSean Jackson, I don't think he's going to return to Washington because Washington has to figure out some way to bring back Kirk Cousins. I don't think they can afford to bring back both of them. I think they're going to stick with the quarterback because we know how long it took Washington to find a viable quarterback. They thought they had RG3, but then he got hurt, and then Kirk Cousins stepped in.
Well, they drafted him the same year.
Well, they did. But it took this team a long time to find a viable option at quarterback, and I also think they're going to do everything in their power to sign Kirk Cousins to a long-term deal, and that's going to pretty much hurt DeSean Jackson because DeSean Jackson's not going to come cheap, too. He's just not. And I do think that DeSean Jackson is going to return to the Eagles because, for one, Chip Kelly is not there anymore, and it is a different team, and he will be playing with a pretty solid quarterback in Carson Wentz, who I think will be even better than his rookie year. And that is big for the Eagles as well, who were looking for a franchise quarterback for the past couple of years. So I don't see DeSean Jackson returning to the Redskins because of Kirk Cousins.
Right.
And they still got to try to figure out how to bring back Pierre Garçon. He had a real good year. He actually had a pretty under-the-radar year, I might add.
Mm-hmm.
He was a valuable optional passing game. And, you know, the Redskins still have Jordan Reed there. So they still have very good options in the passing game. I just don't think they can afford both DeSean Jackson and Kirk Cousins. I just don't think they can. Even if they bring DeSean Jackson on a 1-year, 2-year deal, he's still going to demand some type of money. But Kirk Cousins, I think he's the Redskins' number one offseason priority, and that's one reason I don't think DeSean Jackson will be back. I can realistically see him going to Philadelphia again, honestly.
The problem with the Philadelphia Eagles is the cap space that they have isn't necessarily high. Like, they don't have a lot of space available if they're going to sign him. The teams that actually do have it are like the Browns, the Niners, the Bucks, the Titans, the Jaguars, people like that aren't necessarily good.
I can see him going to the Tennessee Titans.
I can see him going to the Titans too. Mariota's got a decent enough arm because you start looking at the quarterbacks, like I said, who are on these teams. The Niners, I mean, who knows? The Browns, who knows? Also, don't go to Cleveland. That's not going to go well for you. Tampa Bay, Jameis wouldn't be bad, but Jameis is inaccurate with his throws, so that may be a little bit different for him as far as dealing with all of that. The Redskins actually have the 7th most cap space in the NFL, so you know, we talked about who you have to sign between him and Kirk Cousins, but if they just pull the move again where they just say we're going to franchise tag you again for a year, that could work out as DeSean Jackson's favor.
Which I think they might.
Which Kirk Cousins also said like he's willing to do, right? Then you mix in teams like Indianapolis, you know, you got, what's his name?
T.Y.
Hilton on one end.
And then you got Dante
And you put him on the other. If you got Dante Markgraf, that's not a bad receiving core. Now you don't necessarily have people that go kind of slant routes, you know, T.Y. Hilton and DeSean are kind of guys that just like, all right, we're going to go straight down kind of thing. But that wouldn't be a bad situation. Carolina's got the 10th most cap space. Cam Newton obviously has a cannon for an arm, so you can see him there trying to help him out. Like, there's a couple situations, even Baltimore, which isn't that, you know, far down the list, they could be a team that would be able to do that. So you kind of look at the teams that have a strong arm. And DeSean Jackson, while he wanted to stay in Washington, and I get that because Kirk Cousins can do these things, you also look at the other teams that are available that could sign him and have the strong arm to kind of accommodate his style.
Yeah, and I do see him with the Titans because the Tennessee Titans, I think they really need some impact players at at the receiver position.
Mm-hmm.
Philadelphia, you did say they didn't have that much cap space, but I think that might be the one team that I can see DeSean Jackson going like a very friendly contract there. But, we don't know what kind of contract DeSean Jackson wants because he told CSN, Comcast Sports Network, that we'll see what we can do, 2-year, 3-year, 4-year deal, maybe 10, so, he was a little joking there. But, it remains to be seen what the Redskins will do with Kirk Cousins and DeSean Jackson. But I do think that they're going to try to find a way to keep both of them. But I think if they had a choice between DeSean Jackson and Kirk Cousins, there's no doubt that they would rather keep Kirk Cousins.
Well, yeah, no, you go with the quarterback because the quarterback, A, you can stay there longer, and B, he's just someone that, if he's, let's say, both of them at their apex, right? It's better to have an apex quarterback than an apex wide receiver because an apex wide receiver can, only do so much. An apex quarterback, we saw an apex quarterback in the Super Bowl in the fourth quarter. That's what an apex quarterback is, and he basically won you the Super Bowl on his arm in the fourth quarter. So, yeah, obviously, if you're going to have the choice between two of them, you're going to go with the quarterback. And Cousins, honestly, you don't generally let quarterbacks go. Honestly, name me a time that it's happened. The only time you can really give me is when Brett Favre kept retiring, and they basically said, all right, bleep this, we're going to go with Aaron Rodgers. And when Peyton Manning had a trick neck, and they went with Andrew Luck. Outside of that, you really don't have, and maybe this year with Tony Romo, but again, that's because of rookie that you have, or not rookie, I guess, with Aaron Rodgers and, when he was there. But, you have these young quarterbacks who are ready to step up and be there. Kirk Cousins is one of those young quarterbacks, so there's nobody that they can go to as a backup, so they're going to sign him to whatever they want to. They can boast and get all this posturing of we're going to give you the, franchise tag, and you're going to accept the franchise tag, and you're going to be a good soldier. But if he says, no, give me my money, I want my money, give me it now, they can only posture so long before they're like, okay, that's fine. You take our money. Because if they lose him, they're right back to not being a relevant team.
Yeah, exactly. And another reason why I think the Redskins will be fine without DeSean Jackson because of Jamison Crowder. He actually has he has talent, to take the top off the defense, and he can do the underneath routes like that. So I do think he can be a valuable option there. So I think the Redskins will be fine even without DeSean Jackson. But
right,
DeSean Jackson is 30 years old. He is he's not getting any younger. But I do think DeSean Jackson still has really good talent. He can be very good on a very competitive team. But it remains to be seen, Anthony, what will happen in Washington. But we're going to take our second break, and we're actually going to discuss some quarterbacks that are slated to hit the free agent market. Ryan Fitzpatrick and Jay Cutler, and we're going to discuss those two quarterbacks when we get back to the Guns to Me Concepts football podcast.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to the Guns to Me Concepts football podcast, and we're going to get into some off-season quarterback talk. This is actually something that really doesn't occur a lot. A lot of contracts expire, when the new league year starts in March. But that's not the case for Mr. Ryan Fitzpatrick there. Ryan Fitzpatrick's contract with the New York Jets actually expires today,
right?
Which was 5 days after the Super Bowl, and that was per terms of his agreement. So, Ryan Fitzpatrick, he set a Jets franchise record with 31 touchdown passes in 2015. So we all thought, maybe they kind of have a place for a quarterback until they can get someone. And then it took like Ryan Fitzpatrick and the Jets to agree on a contract in August. It took until August, and he just completely crashed and burned in 2016 the way Ryan Fitzpatrick does. And he was benched in December, then he returned week 17, and then this season, Fitzpatrick was just not the same guy. You know, he only averaged 6.7 yards per attempt. He had a 12 touchdown to 17 interception ratio. That's way off of his 2015 year. And he's heading to a free agent market, kind of a weak free agent class, I might add, but that might actually bode well for him. I think he's going to be a backup, especially for a young team. And, you know, he actually came to the Jets as a backup to Geno Smith, who is not even going to be in that team anyway.
Broken jaw.
Yeah, so Geno Smith's going to hit free agency market. So, you know, the two options for the New York Jets at this point are Bryce Petty, and they got Christian Hackenberg. I don't think those two guys are ready to be top, starters in this league. We saw Bryce Petty last year, and we haven't seen Christian Hackenberg yet. But they do have the number 6 pick in the draft,
right.
So they could take a quarterback there. But they took Christian Hackenberg in the second, and it may look like they shouldn't have done that, but they still have Christian Hackenberg, and they have Tony Romo, who might be on the market. You got Jay Cutler on there, who we're going to talk about in a little bit. Fitzpatrick's not going there. Geno Smith, I don't even know if he's going to be on the NFL team. And you still have Colin Kaepernick, who's going to opt out. He might be a cheap option there until you can get someone for the future. So the Jets' quarterback options do not look good unless they get Tony Romo Anthony. That's why I said yesterday I think Tony Romo will be the guys who end up in New York because of what they have now and the talent they have around.
Did you just put Tony Romo in New York with the Jets?
Mm-hmm. I said it yesterday. I said I was being bold. Why not?
Don't do that.
Why can't I?
Don't do that. You don't want that.
Why not? Why can't I, Anthony? Tell me. Persuade me.
The Jets are just the more successful version of the Browns. And when I say more successful, I mean it's because they don't fall on their face every day like a magnet. Like, have you ever seen the movie National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation?
Yeah, of course. That's my favorite Christmas movie of all time.
Good job. Mine, too. Also, there's a scene when he's up in the attic or he's walking and the boards just keep hitting him in the face repeatedly all the time. Hitting him in the face. No matter where he walks, boards hit him in the face. That's the Jets. The only difference between them and the Browns is the Browns, they get hit in the face, then they fall through. Right? Like the Browns just have more bad things happen to them. The Jets just stops to hit them in the face because at least the Jets have a Super Bowl from 1969. That's at least a good part about the Jets. Now, Romo is injured a lot. Don't go there. That's going to go badly for you. Go to a team that has a good offensive line. But specifically, going back to Fitzpatrick, we basically figured out what Fitzpatrick was, right? He was a guy that before 2015 never really had a season that was anything to talk about, right? Like he had 3,800 yards for the Buffalo Bills back in 2011, but he was 24 touchdowns and 23 interceptions. That's not exactly something you want to write about, right? It's like, yeah, you threw for a bunch of yards. Also, you threw 23 interceptions. That's a lot. That's bad. Don't do that. And then in 2015 comes along, 31-15. But like you said, it took till August to finally re-sign him. Like the Jets, the Jets are the most fine, we'll pay you whatever, it's cool, just stay here organization. And they're even look, man, we don't think you're that good. We don't want to sign you. And Fitzpatrick bet on himself, which has had, positive and negative results. You saw, Joe Flacco back in 2012 bet on himself, won the Super Bowl, got a fat contract. Kirk Cousins bet on himself. Looks like he's probably going to get a fat contract, at least maybe not this year, but next, because they basically have shown over the last 2 years, okay, cool, Kirk Cousins may not be the best quarterback in the league, but he's still an above-average quarterback and probably a top 10 quarterback, and you need him in order to be successful, so he's going to get a lot of money. Fitzpatrick was like, I had 31 touchdowns, 15 interceptions. Cool. I'm going to bet on myself, and I'm going to have another good year. Wrong. He played 14 games, like you said, got benched, 12 touchdowns, 17 interceptions, 6 fumbles. Basically, he was a disaster. Everything went down for him. Completion percentage, yards, obviously, because you played less games. Average, touchdowns, more interceptions. even his longest pass was, worse, more fumbles. Everything just went bad for him, and now he's going to be a backup. If he even plays for any team next year, he's going to be a backup quarterback probably for some team like the Broncos or something like that. It'll probably be like the backup for the Broncos just in case something goes wrong because the Broncos are trying to go after.
Well, he would be the third stringer if he goes to the Broncos.
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he's going to go around and try and find a team to play with, that'll basically allow him to be a backup and come in whenever stuff goes south, because if you rely on him, like the Jets have shown, it's not going to go well for you once, the league basically figures out, like, oh, this is all he can do, because we've seen that with other quarterbacks. Like, if we don't know who you are, if they don't know what you're good at, you can go around for a year and be good. We saw that with Colin Kaepernick. We saw that
he was good for a year and a half.
Right. Like it was a thing where it's like, oh, okay, cool, he can do this. But then once you figured it out, it's like, okay, wait, nope, we're going to take that away from you. You have to kind of keep evolving, keep getting better and better. And he couldn't do that, right? He could only do so many things before it was just like, okay, cool, this is done. We're going to stop doing what you're doing. And then, bam, 12 touchdowns, 17 interceptions. But, now you kind of look at the other quarterbacks that are available, right? So if it's not him, you have the situation where the people that brought this up, there's been reports that they want to do, reports that they don't want to do it. You get Jay Cutler, right? Jay Cutler is going to be a free agent with the Bears because that situation's toxic and he's not going to stay in Chicago. So if he goes to the Jets, it's a thing where he follows his buddy again, Brandon Marshall. He follows him again from Denver to Chicago to the Jets, because I don't want to say to New York because they play in Jersey. And I don't think that's a good situation, because I think you basically just have to have a reset button with the Jets. Again, you basically have to say, like, all right, look, we're going to get rid of the quarterback. We're going to get rid of the receivers. We're just going to go young. We're going to blow this whole thing up, because if we bring in Jay Cutler, it's basically just like a thing where it's just like, okay, let's go 8-8 and let's not do anything, right? Because the team around him, while that defense is good, the offense outside of, basically Brandon Marshall, the team isn't that all-around talented, right? It's not a team that can win a Super Bowl. It's a team that'll do fine, but they're not going to win the division, because you know who else in that division? The Patriots. And they don't lose that division if Tom Brady's knee is healthy.
And the Dolphins made the playoffs, so they're better.
And even the Bills, if they get a decent quarterback, could be a good team. Like, that division is really, really hard. So if you're the Jets, I would just basically say, like, all right, man, just like red button, nuke everything. Let's just kind of go back to the drawing board in this whole thing, because it's not like you have a coach that, you've had for a while and it's like, oh, we're going to, invest in him or see how this goes. Well, no. The whole thing, just scrap everything. Scrap the coach, scrap the quarterback, scrap the wide receivers, scrap the assistant coach, scrap the training staff, scrap the guy that puts the sod on the lawn, everything. Just scrap everybody. Fire everybody. Just everything has to go. Fire sale. And just kind of, retool this kind of in a couple of years and just try and, get better players over the next few years, because getting someone like Jay Cutler or any kind of solid quarterback is just you being like an average team, getting your hopes up of making another AFC championship game and not making it to the Super Bowl and not having any kind of success.
Yeah, and I don't think Jay Cutler is going to the Jets either. I don't think so. I think...
Well, my point is, like, I don't think they should go after any high-profile quarterback. No. They should just draft one and just kind of reset the whole thing.
Yeah, and I don't... To be honest with you, I did say Tony Romo will end up in New York. Me personally, I don't want that for him. I don't think they have enough talent to compete for Super Bowl title. But with the Jets, they're like one of those franchises that like to make a lot of quote-unquote bold moves. And me personally...
They do like the bold move, I'll give you that.
Yeah, I do think that they're one of those type of teams that... Well, because, they're probably one of the toughest market ever in America.
Oh, yeah.
And then they're competing. They're basically the little brother of the Giants. So they want to make that big splash to get their fans excited, especially Fireman Fred there in New York.
Fireman Ed.
Fireman Ed.
You call him Fireman Fred?
I did. I'm so sorry, Fireman Ed. Shout out to Fireman Ed there.
Does he still do it? I thought he retired.
I think he did because they were so bad.
And then he came back?
But I think if they become good, I think he will be back.
It's just the Jets are just you're right. The Jets are the team that's basically like trying to impress the girl every time, and it's just like, oh, I like guys that have tattoos. And he comes back with like actual sleeves. Like he got like all of them in one day. It was like a couple $1,000s. Like, I got tattoos. He's like, oh, I don't like guys with tattoos anymore. He's like, like that's what the Jets are, right? Like that's what they are. They just basically are like, oh, okay, cool. This will make them happy. All right, let's go do this, even if it's not good for you as an organization. You're like, oh, they'll like this. We'll do this kind of thing.
Yeah, and speaking of Jay Cutler. what do you see Jay Cutler going to the Jets? I don't think he will. Personally, I'm actually afraid that he will end up with the 49ers. And I know Kyle Shanahan is there.
You could do a lot worse.
I know Kyle Shanahan is there, but there's really not a whole lot of talent on that team.
No.
But I do think Jay Cutler will be a starter next year.
See, I could say the same thing with the Jets as I can with the Niners of just kind of, red button nuke everything. If Jay Cutler were to go there, it would just be, the Kyle Shanahan thing, right? That's the only kind of hope you would have is like, oh, he does well with quarterbacks. The problem is Kyle Shanahan's got a lot on his plate right now, right? He's got the thing where you basically have, he's going to be the offensive coordinator because he already said that. He said he's going to be both the coach and OC, and that's a lot of pressure to put on yourself, and you hope that he doesn't kind of get pulled too thin and everything else like that, and he can't be as good with quarterbacks because he has to deal with both the linebackers and the special teams and the media and all that other stuff like that because now he's the head coach. But that would be the one kind of, saving grace. It's like, okay, if Cutler goes there, he has someone that can rein him in, and you could do worse. But if I'm Cutler, that's probably where he's going to go because you kind of look at the bad teams that are available that he would go to. I mean, I could even see him if, everything goes south, and basically Jacksonville decides, okay, we've had enough of, what's his name? Blake Bortles, and they go with Jay Cutler because we thought that Jacksonville had a solid enough squad going into the year, and they basically say, like, all right, let's get like a good quarterback in here. Maybe it'll be a little bit better.
I still think Blake Bortles still has. I think he still has time. I think honestly, Blake Bortles is entering a make or break year, and if he doesn't cut it this year, I think they're done with him. Mm-hmm. I think the Niners will have a chance to bring back Colin Kaepernick. Don't get me wrong, Colin Kaepernick is not that franchise quarterback. I just feel like he's a perfect placeholder for now. Remember, Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch have 6-year contracts, so they got time to build this team.
Yeah.
They got a lot of time now, and Jay York's not going to press the nuke button again after 1 year.
Maybe not 1 year, maybe 2.
Maybe after the second year. But they have time to build up this team.
If they go 2-14 over the next 2 years, do you think Jed York gets all kind of mad and it's like, I thought we'd be better, fired? It's like Jed, they got 4 years.
It depends on how they look in those 2-14 years. See, I think if they went 2-14 this year,
how good can you look at a 2-14 year?
Okay, look, 2-14. This is probably the worst team I've ever seen since the 0-16 Lions. And even before that, the 2004 49ers were pretty bad too. But the 2004 49ers were more competitive than the 2016 49ers. And if they look somewhat competitive in the next few years, then okay, I can see maybe Jay say, okay, we're starting to slowly see the process here. So they're basically in 76ers mode right now. Mm-hmm. The 49ers are basically the 76ers of the NFL right now. They're all about trusting the process. That's basically where they're at right now.
Yeah.
That's basically all I can say. But I do expect Jay Cutler to be a starter. It depends where he ends up.
Right.
Tony Romo, I do think he would end up in New York because, the Jets always try to make bold moves and, they always try to impress the girl that always likes certain things. But, it remains to be seen. We're heading to a very, very kind of exciting time pretty soon here with free agency, and we will discuss everything.
Well, you talked about the things not like the draft or the free agent class not being that good as far as talent goes, but at least it's interesting, right?
It is interesting, yeah.
You get a situation with Romo, who obviously is really talented, but he's not exactly been healthy. You get the situation where Jay Cutler has all the talent, but he's never put it together. And then if one of them goes to, say, Kansas City, then you get Alex Smith, who's a free agent. Like, you have at least storylines. Just the people that are available aren't necessarily like, top notch, like, blue chippers.
And that means Alex Smith can return to the 49ers. I'm kidding. I don't think he's going to want to end up
back. Remember what happened when the team wasn't good and he was a quarterback? Same thing.
Yeah, I don't think he wants to end up back over there.
No.
But that's going to conclude our show, Anthony. That's going to conclude it. Good job today.
Thank you, man. You too.
You brought it, man. Okay, now. All right, well, I'd like to thank you guys for tuning in to the Going to Meet Concepts Football Podcast. As always, I'm Jeremiah.
And I'm Anthony.
And we will be back to Monday. I almost said tomorrow.
Nope, not tomorrow. I will not be here on Saturday. I like this place. I don't like this place that much. I'm not being here on Saturday.
I will be back on Monday.
Yep.
And I will discuss any news that comes out in the next 72 hours. Is that correct?
Basically, yeah. The next 72 hours. So we're going to take a 72-hour break here. And I will be back to discuss anything that goes on in the world of football. This is going to be Constance Football Podcast. I'd like to thank you guys for tuning in. You guys have a great weekend.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.